All right, we are live. We are live. We are blurry, but we're live. We'll get to the normal, non-blurry. I still haven't figured out how to get it to stop doing this. Um, why the hell? Yo, okay, we're back. All right. No, well, we are live. We are live. We're live. This is Ask Me Almost Anything with Derek Ofaderumwa. I'm the host of the Medicine Shell. For those who don't know, I'm trying different camera angles, so if this one makes sense, let me know. I feel like there's a delay. I feel like there's a delay. Okay, whatever. Anyways, yeah. Okay, once we get 10 people in here, we're going to go ahead and begin. As I said earlier, my name is Derek O'Fodder. I'm the host of the Medicine Shell here on YouTube and on patreon.com/the Medicine Shell. I teach Igbo spirituality, cosmology, and ancestral thoughts, also known as Odinani, which translates to as it is on the land. This is the place to ask all of those questions or all the questions about ancestral spirituality. There's also a lot going on in Nigeria. So if you guys want to discuss that, let me know. Explaining Nigeria is very difficult. So I'm going to be for real. I'm not looking super forward to it. But if that's what you guys want to talk about, we can do that. If we get 10 people in here, we're going to go ahead and begin. Those of you who are already here, let me know who's all in the house. If this is your first time, let me know this is your first time. Once we get 10, we're going to go ahead and begin. So, as a part of what I do, we have a traditional medicine class known as Ogun, right? 2-level traditional medicine class. If you are interested in or you have the calling to be a healer, it's an incredible experience. We are wrapping up this current session, and we'll be starting the next session in the spring. The seats fill up very fast. Usually try to keep it within 12 people. And so if you're interested, message me and let me know right away. Or sign up at www.kedu.me. You'll also see there that there's an Igbo language class. So if you have made the resolution to learn the Igbo language this year, I have the most effective Igbo language program on planet Earth. We have taught hundreds of people the Igbo language over the past 4 or 5 years now. One of our alumni, our Igbo 3 alumni, is in Nigeria right now. I hope she's watching. And if she's watching, shout out to her. She's in Nigeria right now. She's ethnically Black American, but she was recently adopted by a community in Onitsha. So she's with her community now. There she is! Yay! He said, Chidi, I was just bragging on you. I was just bragging on you. You know, I've never seen myself in this angle before. This is interesting. Uluma, you know, I'm looking at myself at an angle I've never seen myself in. It's like a side-ish. I've never seen myself in this angle before. I think I'm looking at a different person. But anyways, he say, you summon me. Yes. We connect from more to more. Are you? You're okay. You're still there. Hey, Chidimma, Ezemonye Ogene. Hey, you're really on the soil. He say, let us go ahead and begin. Phoenix, Ndewo. Aurora, Ndewo. I wanted to call you by your secret alias, but I'll call you by your stage name, Aurora. Or I don't know if I've asked you this. Is that your English name? Aurora, is that your English name? LOL, I know. I'm still here. It's 4:35 a.m. He said, Chidi, if you are ever in Awo Mama in Imo State, it's not far from Anambra. It's kind of close to the border. If you're ever in the place, you have a place to stay 100%. Just let me know. You have 2, 3 places to stay, not all owned by me. We have a family home, and then my brother-in-law has a lodge, like a guest lodge. So 2 places to stay. Just internet name. Cool. All right, y'all. Let us go ahead and begin. This is Ask Me Anything. You guys ask me questions. Once the questions run out, I run out. I am still confused. I've never seen myself at this angle. I wonder if that's ever happened to any of you guys. So yeah, got a meaty ass head. I'll likely fall asleep earlier than normal. I'm still recovering. Yes, I'm looking forward to going to sleep. I took it very easy last week, and I realized that that's 100% what I needed. So you're going to be noticing me laughing and smiling a lot in this live because I feel very rested. I took it super easy last week, and I tried not to feel guilty about it too, and it felt good. I like. Okay, cool. Aaron name Ndewo, Ndewo, no Ndewo, Ndewo. Everybody that's here, looks like you guys are not doing the. You have a lot of energy. Yeah, thank you. I'm glad you noticed. Well, yeah, I feel rested. I feel relaxed. I feel like I'm getting my senses back. We did a big move over the summer, and during the process, I don't know, I just got entered like a very strange headspace. Like I haven't been feeling like myself lately. Hence why we haven't been getting videos. But part of what brought my energy back is that I'm in the middle of a video and I discovered something that I don't think anybody knows, right? And I'm going to be sharing in the next video. And that's the type of stuff that gives my chi life. So Odemma, I'm going to bed now. I'll watch the rematch. The okay, Chidu, tell us some stories before you go. How's Nigeria been? Tell us some stories. Tell us some stories. Tell us just one story. I always the meteor, the head, the meteor, the information. Yeah, I like that. Real talk. All right, real talk. I wish I can. They should make it so that I can congratulate people. I should pin this message. No, I got to keep my thing up. LOL, it's been amazing. Cool. So it's I find it very interesting. We've had in all of the years of Kedu, we have had 5 or 6 people finish Ebo 3, and all of them except one end up in Nigeria. So I think that's probably why you guys go to that level. I don't know, Chidi, I think you did Ebo 3. I'm not 100% sure. I think you did. Yeah. Well, anyways, you speak, so you speak now. People have been clocking me as a water person. I saw some masquerades. He said, "Yeah, yeah, that's what's up." I'm glad they're doing that. Right. I'm glad they're doing it. And I'm also glad that you're experiencing everything firsthand, right? It's one thing for me to be talking about it. It's another thing for you to go there and somebody be like, "Oh, you're a water person, aren't you?" Right? It's a whole different experience. Those of you who have not been back home before, go back home. Go back home. That's amazing. I'm trying to save up so I can take the kids, myself and the kids, and they like to extort us on the flight tickets. So yeah, and the power getting cut off just makes me giggle. Right? People act like it's such a big tragedy. I don't mind it. I mean, like it's unfortunate to live with it that and have to plan your life around it. But I remember when I was living in Nigeria. Of course, I was a kid though. It never bothered me. You know what I mean? I need to buckle down and learn Igbo before I visit Nigeria again. Oshun Kemi Shabazz, are you joining Kedu this next quarter? We're having a class in March. Let me know if you're joining. And, well, looks like everybody's just hanging out today. We don't really have questions. I hope for those who celebrate Christmas, I hope Christmas has been good for everybody. I hope you guys have had time off and rest and relaxation and gotten to connect with family and all of that, right? For those who don't celebrate or who do celebrate, and even those who don't celebrate, right? I've been napping like you wouldn't believe, and I feel amazing, right? Ocean says I would love to. I'll do my. Send me an email. Oshun, I don't know if you're in the Patreon, but if you're at the highest level on Patreon, the class is free. But send me an email so we can work something out. I'll do my. Let's see here, guys. If you here's the thing, this is the rule. If we do not have questions to ask, I do have to run. If we do not have questions to ask, I do have to run. Okay, John. We got some serious players in the house. John says, "What are distinction between Dibia, Fa Dibia Ogon, and Dibia that sacrifices? Can those roles overlap?" Very dope. Very dope. Very dope. So, in the ancestral tradition, for those who don't know, a Dibia is a master of Abia. Abia is wisdom from beyond. So even though Dibia gets translated as doctor, which is correct, it is a correct translation, right? It gets translated as doctor. A Dibia is the person who brings knowledge from beyond the the expected realm, right? From beyond. Abia is wisdom from beyond, wisdom from your chi, wisdom from the source. And a D Abia is a master of that. Now, because there a Dibia is a master of wisdom, there are many types of wisdom. Right? There are many types of wisdom. So what happens is as a Dibia grows, they become more and more specialized into what they are supposed to be as a Dibia, right? Most DBS begin very general. They're very general. They do all. So answering one of the parts of your question, John, most DBS begin doing everything, right? Most DBS begin doing everything. But there are certain things that are not for certain people. For example, we teach AFA in the traditional medicine class, but I do let people know AFA is not for everybody. There are specific people who have the ofo, which is the authority or the anointing, I think we would say in the West, to do afa. It's best left for those people to do that as a trade and as a profession, right? Um, so as you develop as a DBA, you get to know yourself more, and the more you know yourself, the more you specialize in one thing or another. So some people have a calling, and the way you kind of know is you already naturally gravitate towards that thing. So a DBA mborogu, before you even become a DBA mborogu, you're already going to have a passion within yourself for medicine, a passion within yourself for roots, for plants, for nature, for healing, for the sciences that come with that. It's already going to be a part of who you are as a person, right? If you become a Dibia Afa, that type of thing, I don't know anything else that's kind of like Afa, but that type of thing is already going to resonate with you. Nobody ever becomes a Dibia of something that they are not already naturally passionate about and naturally gifted in. Okay. They're not already passionate about or naturally gifted in. Okay. Because what our people say is that DBAs are born, they are not made. Okay, a DBA is born. Whatever you are, whoever you are as a person, whatever it is you come into the world to do, you are born as that thing. You do not become it, if that makes sense. Once a person becomes a DBA, it's really them just accepting who they are. Who you are is already going to tell you what kind of DBA you're going to be. There is one of these documents, it really summed up the African understanding of knowledge and learning systems. And for those who don't know, on Patreon, I have a library with like over 300 books, documents that discuss ancestral spirituality, things like that. I go to it for my own research and stuff. And one of the documents in there, in the album folder, for those who want to read it, it's this person asking. There's a scene where a man is asking a woman, um, "So you're a midwife? What? How did you know that you were to become a midwife?" Right? Because she said it was her calling. And she said she knew it was her calling because anytime midwifing was being done in the community, she would arrive as a child, right? Anytime midwifing was being done, she would arrive, right? If you look at the things you did as a child, there are certain things that when this is going on, you got to go there. I got to go be there. I got to be around it. That's because that's a part of who you are. That's a part of your chi. That's a part of the ofo or the authority, staff of authority that you've been given to carry out in the world. Okay, so a dibia afa is going to already have a natural affinity for afa. A dibia morog will have a natural affinity for that thing. Right? It's not, you don't really pick. It's as you get to know yourself, you get to know what kind of dibia you are. Right? It's almost like a musician. Well, how would I know what genre of music I'll make? Right? You're going to make the genre of music that resonates most with you and also is an expression of who you are. Sometimes, often, it's going to be a mix of different things, right? But another thing I wanted to add too. So, in back in the day, the Dibia Afa was considered the highest form of Dibia, the divination Dibia. Even though today, I think almost every Dibia does Afa, especially the younger ones, right? Back in the day, when you did your initiation as a Dibia, what would happen? There would be a long period of isolation, right? Sometimes you'd be in a room by yourself. Sometimes you'd be in a forest by yourself. Sometimes, like a Debia friend of mine, he was held underwater for hours. He said for hours, and he was told that eventually he won't need to breathe, and once he stops needing breath, he'll unlock his full power, his full self, right? And some of them will be sent into a forest and told don't emerge until you see the spirit of this forest. Some of them will have to stare at a tree until they see themselves in a tree, just different things like that. But once you've crossed that threshold and you've done that thing, another interesting one is go into a forest until you see dwarves with dreadlocks. That's a common one too. And it was the reason that one's interesting to me is because I saw a video of a person being initiated as a healer in the Ivory Coast, and they had the exact same ritual, right? So what happens is after you go through that phase, you then do your initiation, your Irago, right? You have a dinner with your Agon, which is you prepare a meal and this whole thing, and then after that, you had this is back in the day. They don't do it anymore. So they'll cut ichi marks on your head, which are like hundreds of little lines with a razor on your head that like represent the rising sun. It also represents your spiritual face, your inhuara, your light face, and your which is your true face. You're shedding your old face and revealing the face underneath, which is light, right? So you're giving these marks. They'll take your tongue. They'll give you a whole bunch of cuts on the sides of your tongue, and they'll pour something into it that burns. It's really hot, like a concoction. This is to keep you from lying. Like you can't lie after this has been done. It's kind of a if I lie, I die thing. Then they'll take this like thing that has pepper in it and they'll pour it in your eyes. And you'll have to stare at the sun. This is for DB. This is back in the day. They don't do this anymore. People want to be cute now, so they can't do this anymore. And you'll be sitting there and you'll bleed onto the ground, right? Now, what will happen is if you return back to that spot and there's a tree growing, a tree starts growing from there, and that tree grows for 14 years and reveals that it's an ugili tree. If it's an ugili tree, that means that you are a dibia afa, and then you'll use the seeds from that tree once they naturally drop to make your own afa or your own divination beads. Now, all that process I gave you should give you a picture of how rare it used to be a dibia afa back in the day. Back in the day, if you were a DB alpha like 1700s and earlier, people would travel from like Togo and Ghana to come and see you. And I have documented, there's documents that say this, right? Because it was so rare. You understand? Now it's more common. Now it's more common. So there's no hard rule on you should be this one, you should be that one. It's usually what resonates with you. In the past, they had rituals for knowing, or they still do anyways, rituals for knowing which one works better for you if you can't really decide. But it's ultimately like picking a music genre as a musician. You're just ultimately just doing whichever one expresses you the best, right? Whichever one's realest to you. Flintstones, he said. Flintstones. Yeah. All right. There, Olivia. Really nice seeing you. Okay, they tried to sell me something for 25K, but I haggled it down to 12K. Woo! He said, "Where's my oh? Hey, yeah, Chidi, you become a real local aburo." Then she haggled it down to 12K. He said, "You're no longer an Oyibo, you're no longer a foreigner. And once you learn how to haggle, you're no longer a foreigner, right? Once you learn how to start arguing with people in the market." Why do you think it's more common now? It's more common to do alpha. Um, why is it more common? I think. Oh wow, that's a good question. That is a good question. Why is it more? I think it's more common now because the old initiation isn't done anymore with the cuts and the slashes and the bleeding and the tree. That's not done anymore. So now, if you have a natural interest in it, there's really nothing stopping you from becoming a DB Alpha, right? But DB Alpha have levels. There are levels to DB Alpha. You understand? I've never encountered a DB Alpha that wasn't great at what they did. But among the ones I've encountered, I know that there are levels. There are some that will tell you something and you'll go, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And there are some that'll tell you something real specific to you that you didn't tell them, right? There are levels. So one of the best Dibia Afa in my area that I'm aware of lives in a town of Umaka. He's a very old man. And I don't live in Umaka. Like my uh, people are not from there. But we'll travel all the way over there whenever a new child is born to have that person do alpha to figure out who they reincarnated from because the person's reputation for accuracy and their experience and how serious they take the thing, right? So yeah, it's more common because I think the barriers of entry have dropped, like they're not there anymore, you know. Um, and I don't know, maybe if we brought them back, it'll be different. So we'll see. Good question though, John. Uh, Market life is also amazing. I'm getting my true haggles. I love that. I love that. I love that. I have never seen myself at this angle. This is so funny. All right. So where are we at? What are the distinctions? Okay. So do you think it's? Do you think that the Sphinx is a leopard instead of a lion? I have a suspicion that it's alcohol. Oh wow! 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 Hold on. Ike, Mezike. Wow. Hold on. And do you know why this is blowing my mind? Because I know that there's something that we have in common with people of Egypt, Kemet, whatever you want to call it, is that people who were the spiritualists of the society wore leopard skin. They didn't wear lion, they wore leopard. In all throughout Africa, you see this. You see it in Congo. You see it um, all of southern Nigeria, all the way to Gambia. You see everywhere. Everybody wears leopard when they're a spiritualist, right? When they're a spiritually enlightened person, they wear leopard skin. Or when they're the speaker for more, they wear leopard skin. Or when they're an exalted person, they wear leopard skin. So now I'm wondering, I, I what role? Let me look this up. What role do lions play in Egypt? Lions in ancient Egypt. Okay, so it may be a lion because they're saying that the lion is associated with, I'm going to pronounce this wrong, Shekmet and Basset. So maybe it's a protecting lion in reference to those two. What makes you think it's a leopard? That's an interesting thought. And if it was, that would open up a whole new thing. Isn't the leopard associated with Osiris? Yes. So for those who don't know, the leopard, the reason those people get to wear leopard is because this thing that we call in the West, we call it the third eye. In Odinani, we call it the Ose the Ose right? And what's this book? Leopard, not Leopards of the Magic Dawn. After God is Dibia, does a really good job of explaining that the Ose is like an eye with several eyes on it, right? It is an eye with hundreds of eyes in it. So if you were to open a third eye, it would be an eye with a whole bunch of dots, a whole bunch of eye, and it is also embodied in the flesh of the skin of the leopard, the coat of the leopard. The leopard also, if you look at the way the movement of the leopard is excellent in all terrains. So the leopard is an zoom more, an all seeing, all knowing, all being more. The leopard is excellent in water. The leopard is excellent on land. It's excellent in the air. Any element you put it in is excellent. It performs well. So in that sense, it represents that Osera, that spiritual eye that can see in all of these different terrains and so forth, right? As well as the total and complete seer, a person whose two eyes are sharp and their third eye is sharp. So yeah, 100%. Shekmet is associated with the eye of Ra. That is amazing. So that's literally what that's what, that's what I was just saying, right? That's what I was just saying. So yeah, that would be solar energy. Yes, you understand. The leopard is intellect. He say, you got it, 100%, 100%. You guys get it. Down to Zulu. Zulu also wear it too. You're 100% correct. Anytime you see those people, you're gonna see leopards, right? Anytime you see those people, you see leopards. So, okay, which is why I was like, okay, what if it is a leopard? I don't know. Maybe it's not a lion. Uh, GD Miller in the house. Hey, good seeing you. One day. Good. Keduki. All right. Leopard and the color red. Okay, I missed the first part. Aghun would make more sense. Yep. Leopard priests. Yep. Okay. So no, you guys already get this. Chidi, didn't you say you're going to sleep? Jaguars in South America. Very interesting too, but 100%. Yeah. 100%. The jaguar as well in South America, right? Black Panthers in North America. I want to add that too. But yeah, 100%. Everywhere you go, the leopard seems to always have the same representation, right? The same. It represents something similar, and it's worn and used in a similar way. So I don't know if you guys have noticed, but there's these clothes that Igbo people wear that's got a bunch of little pictures of lions on it. So that's called ishiagu. Ishiagu. That is a modern day replacement for leopard skin. Okay. Those heads are supposed to be dots. Now, somebody annoyingly translated leopard as lion. And so the manufacturers have just made it lion. So you get a bunch of lion heads all over the place. But I'm going to get a leopard one just to be contrary. Um, but yeah, it used to be lion and you used to only wear that fabric. So like in my dad's generation, it was more velvet. It was a more velvet feeling one. And I think those ones are coming back. And then they got like a cotton one now, but I think the velvet ones are coming back because it's supposed to feel like leopard fur. But the decision was really to do it because if everybody started wearing leopard, all the leopards wouldn't exist. So, ọ dị mma ahụ gị ahụ ọ dị gị mụ na onwe m enwere ihe na-eme m but mana ọ na-agafe, you understand. Enwere ihe na-eme m ọ na-eme m na Christmas Eve mana ọ na-aga, you understand. Jishike gị na onwe gị ka ị dị. uh as long as not the polyester one anymore. Which one's the polyester one? Which one's the polyester one? I just know the one that feels like velvet, and then the one that's like a cotton, like the I don't want to say cheaper one. So maybe that's actually polyester. Does the word "eze" actually mean leopard? And was the language tribe called before the Igbos? Yeah. So the word "eze" does not mean leopard. The word "eze" is like an exalted person. An exalted person. The root word is ze, something that's hidden away. Okay, so if you go to the story of Odachi Nebere, or any story about Chuku, like the nature of Chuku, there is this consistency of Chuku hiding away or pulling away or being set apart from others, right? So an Eze is very literally one that is set apart from others, in a sense, representing the Chi or Chuku elements of that social environment, be it a home, be it a family, be it an organization, the head person, right? That kind of thing. The conceptualizer, right? Uh, Yeah, that was another part of your question. What was and was there a language tribe before they were called Igbo? I don't have an answer for that. People have their theories, but there are a lot of towns with the word Igbo in them. So I would say that we've probably been called Igbo people for a very long time. I think Igbo used to refer more to people who planted, who farmed, and then there were Uru people who fished and dealt with like water type of stuff. Um, and now they're all Igbo, right? But I think it used to be more of a lifestyle distinction than the name of the ethnic group. I don't know if there was a name before Igbo. I don't know if there was a name before Igbo, but there's a lot of very old towns with Igbo in them. Ibuzo, um, Amibo, which Amiibo claims to be the source of all Igbo people, right? One of many towns that have that claim. Amiibo, Igbo Zo, Igbo Etiti. There's a whole lot of towns with Igbo in it. So I would think that means that we've been called that for a very long time, right? Um, but it may have been a lifestyle distinction, like an ancient farmer, right? Or the strange how the Bantu expansion seems to have started near Igbo land. So I actually talk about this in the next video because I found something that blew my mind. And I understand that sometimes when I get really historical and granular, some of you guys don't want to hear it in the videos. But right now, I do not give a damn. My mind is thoroughly blown right now. But I'm going to be talking about that in the next video. My next video is going to be on Ahia Njoku. Ahia Njoku or Njokuji. Njokuji is the Abara of yams. The Abara of yams. And Njokuji, based on my findings, is the most important Abara in the history of Africa. And that's what my video is going to be about, right? And I talk about the Bantu migration, right? The Bantu migration, I'll call it Bantu migration theory because I don't fully know what happened, right? But the Bantu migration theory, I've found some really interesting stuff that points back in that direction. But it's no coincidence that it started in that area. You know, I also want to know how they make their distinction on who's Bantu and who's not. That's why I say Bantu migration theory, because if it's these language parallels, you understand, like same language family, Igbo shares those language parallels with them as well, right? So if Bantu is supposed to be the people, the one people, right? We would say Mbutu, right? But Edo also has those shares that, and so does Yoruba and Igala and Ewe and Akan and da 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 da. So I wonder why they drew the line right where they drew it. I'm not saying there's anything nefarious behind it. I'm just curious to know what makes why, because they say that it ends in like the Cross Rivers region, right? But there's some Igbo people that are Cross Rivers people, like Arochukwu, Ebonyi people, things like that. Ironically enough, those are the ones that are allowed to join Ekbe society, right? And we know that Ekbe society has links to Congo. So maybe there's something to it. You understand? Maybe there's something to it. But Ekbe is very much a Bantu thing. It's very much a Bantu thing, right? Going by the line they drew. But I don't think the line is language because the parallels they find in the Bantu languages, you can also find them throughout West Africa, right? So Odinani, Bantu Kwa. I'm here for your entire expression. Ndewo. Polyester Ishago like slippery. Not, I don't think I. Anyways, they use a lot of polyester at home, so who knows? But yeah, I've never had Ishago. Wait, let me not say speak too soon. Yeah, I know I've never had Ishago. Jaguars have been returning to Arizona in small number. Good, good, good. The earth is healing. Is Ishago Chuku kind of reminds me of Amun and Kemetic, um, which I believe means the hidden one. Oh, interesting. So this idea of a hidden god is common throughout Africa, right? You'll also notice like a lot of traditional rulers, which they're really priests, right? But a lot of traditional priests in throughout Africa, they have these distinctions, or like I'll use Nigeria, right? In the Nigeria area, they always have these rules where you're not supposed to see them eating. You're not supposed to see them defecating, using any type of bathroom type of thing. You're not supposed to, a lot of them, you're not supposed to look them in the face. Like there's one in Yoruba land with a whole bunch of stuff hanging over his face, right? That's kind of the same idea. The Yoruba of Benin, same idea. Even the Nze in Igbo culture. So in Igbo culture, we don't have kings per se, or those like yeah, it's not a monarchical system. Though we have people you can call monarchs, right? But they're really not. but the Nze is a title a person takes. An Nze is somebody who's set apart. The idea is somebody who is set apart. So the same rules, you can't watch, if you're not an Nze, you can't see an Nze eat, right? I'll eventually be taking my Nze title. It'll be the last time any of y'all see me eating nothing. It's like, you're not supposed to see an Nze eat. You're not supposed to see an Nze use bodily parts, whatever. And only an Nze only eats food that was cooked by or blessed by his wife, right? Things like that. So all of that relates back to Chuku. So I wouldn't be surprised if Amun has a similar understanding, right? Amun has a similar. It's also why traditionally people didn't really appeal to Chuku for things. Whatever Chuku's will is already is. It's not up to us to change or negotiate. It's not negotiable, right? Whatever the will is, it is, and we just kind of we're gonna watch it happen. But we can negotiate things with a lot of the other Abara, right? Their different facets of life. But with Chuku's, that's already set and done. It's like existence is a book, right? And Chuku is the idea that the author had in their head. Okay, so you can't appeal to that idea in their head. It's already panned out. It's already out there, right? But it's hidden. It's not something you can access or see, right? So yeah, I'm sure I wouldn't be surprised if Amun is conceptualized under the same idea or understood in the same idea. Is traditional Igbo New Year the same as the Asian New Year, second moon February? Um, Aurora, that's a really good question. So technically, there's no Igbo New Year, technically, right? But the second moon is treated as the beginning of the new calendar year, even though it's not regarded as a new year. And the reason I say there's no new year is because most communities didn't count the years. All right. Most communities don't count the years, but on the second moon we begin the thing, which I think I'm surprised the Asians do it that way too. I thought it was mainly an African thing. I'm surprised the Asians do it too. But yeah, second moon is the beginning of the new calendar season. How about that? Right. But it's not technically a new year, right? You'll see some masquerades come out, but it's not like a big celebration. And then some people would argue that New Yam Festival is the new year. Some people would argue that. So yeah, but there's no set new year. But yeah, there is the year begins in on the second moon, just like the Asian calendar you're referring to. I strongly believe it's why Mardi Gras is celebrated in the Western Hemisphere. Strongly believe, but I could be wrong. All right, where are we at? How is it revered and celebrated? It's often not celebrated, but when it is celebrated, masquerades come out. Entertainment masquerades that are meant for entertainment will come out on the second night. Okay, so if your community has masquerades come out in February or like that kind of February second moon time, that's why. That's why, right? But every town has a different way of doing it, and some towns don't do it at all. They just know this is the beginning of the new moon, you know. And then, of course, on a family level, it would make sense. There's a sacrifice that is done once a year to Amadioha. Hold on, I have to fix my thing. If I'm saying fix like it's technical, I have to plug the charger in. So there's a sacrifice that's done once a year to Amadioha. And it's either done on the second moon or the final moon. It's the person's choice, but it's usually the father of the household that will do it. It's a sacrifice of a ram. It's usually supposed to be a small, quiet event, not like a big thing. Right? Hold on, yo, yo. Yeah, I'm fine. Think, Phil. I'll be back, everybody. Hold on. I'm okay. This is not the same angle I had. Okay, all right, this should suffice. All right, where are we? You okay? I'm fine. I knocked over my light fixture and I'm trying to get it back in the old spot, but it's looking like it's not going to happen. So hold on. Yeah, appreciate you asking. Uh, why do they say that agriculture? Oh man, so Ike, it seems like you're. I don't know if you're reading my mind. I don't know if we're on the same wavelength right now, but I actually go into that in my next video, and I don't expect my next video to appeal to everybody. This one is for me, right? This one is for me. But this next video challenges and debunks the idea that agriculture started in Africa 3,000 years ago. The reason they do that is because they don't want to give anything a date older than 6,000 years so that they can't say things come from people outside of Eurasia, right? And so they're willing to accept, okay, fine, the Asians got some things too, but they don't want to go any further than that, right? So for some reason, historically, nothing is older than 6,000 years. But there are farm tools in Africa that are older than the entire white race. And I know exactly where they're at. And they have been acknowledged historically as farm tools. And I'm tired, kids be wilding. I'm tired of them being not acknowledged for what they are. So in the next one, I present evidence, I present my whole case as to the fact that farming is actually 1.7 million years old. 1.7 million years old. It is not a new thing. It has been with us since the beginning. It's a defining feature of humanity. It doesn't take much for anybody who's been outside 3 times to understand that things grow from seeds. And it has been with us for 1.7 million years, and I have all the evidence on planet Earth. And that is why Njoku G, is the most important Abara in all of Africa. This is you're getting close. So he can't. I don't know if it's that time. I don't know if we're tapped into the same thing. I don't know if there's a certain more that wants to be heard. I don't know if I had Njoku said, all right, it's time for me to tell my story. But your question is literally what's ringing in my head right now. I've been working on the video for the past 4 days, and it's I'm hot, I'm heated, So I didn't know. 1.7 million, yes. 1.7 million, yes. And this is known archaeologically. It's known. They just refuse to say it. And so sometimes it's like, yes, but it was a crude agriculture. Well, yeah, 1.7 million. Yeah. 1.7 million. It has been with us since the beginning of humanity. Agriculture has been with us. Planting has been with us since the beginning of humanity. It's nothing new. I mean, how many million-year-old species? And only in the last 7,000 years we figured out that things grow from seeds. Doesn't that sound kind of silly? So I gotta, of course, this is a big historical claim. I gotta bring all the evidence in the world. So I gotta do extra research. I gotta test my hypothesis. I gotta make sure it stands the ground, because I know if these folk, hear what I got to say, they might have something to say back. So I gotta be ready for everything. But I know what I'm saying. 1.7 million years. That's the evidence wise. That's as far back as we can go for agriculture, evidence wise. Okay, kids be wild mindful. Mine don't sleep anymore. Mine don't sleep anymore. Uh, they need to feel special, so they lie. Yeah, exactly. Right. Exactly. And funny enough, I don't think we have that same instinct. So often the lie gets ahead of us because it's like it's like, why are you doing that? You know, by the time I even start learning the thing, you've been at it lying for 200 years on it, right? That kind of thing. By the time I even hear about it, you understand. But yeah, 1.7 million years, and even there's cave and stone paintings all throughout Africa of that shows harvesting and chariots. And this is known. It's a known thing. It's not hidden, right? But it's not. I don't think they. How about this? Yes, there's a lot of lying going on, but I think what they try to control what's being focused. Focused. Speaking of focus, like this camera, they try to control what's being focused on, right? They try to control what's being focused on, and in the process of trying to control what's being focused on, they try to. I'm going to try to say this word: obfuscate. I think that's the right word: obfuscate. They try to decade certain things. So, oh, but yeah, just chronic unnecessary lying. But I don't like honestly. I don't think any historian that is Western trained is a credible source of information because you can walk out of a Western institution, not know one African country, and be considered an expert on geopolitics, can be considered an educated person, be considered knowledgeable. Now, if I were to be an expert on history and I grew up in Africa, but I don't know the difference between Germany and England, nobody would ever take me seriously. So I'm going to go ahead and return the favor and not take these people seriously because they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. You know what I mean? They took the continent where human beings spent the majority of their existence and said, well, that one's a detail. Okay, well then you're not a credible source of information. So I'm going to bring the actual story, right? I'm going to bring in the next video. You're going to make it clear, like how old agriculture is and how a lot of it ties back to these stories that our people tell as far as that goes, right? And I've always said that the oral history is more accurate, is better than written, right? And I have a good example as to why this time. So, 3,000 my ass. Let's do this. Agriculture is 3,000 years old, allegedly. I think they say, I think they say with their own words that the Bantu migrations predate those 3,000 years, but it was specifically agricultural knowledge that caused that migration. Knowledge of agriculture and ironworking that caused that migration. But for some reason, people during that time didn't have agriculture or iron. Okay, you know, okay, where are we at? Yeah, the fact that they attribute paper to Asia, even though the word route comes from papyrus, is clearly an African invention. Exactly. Exactly. Right. So again, after a while, it's like, why do we keep considering these people credible sources of information? Right. The type of stuff you're allowed to get away with in a lot of Western institutions. If the roles were reversed, if it was like a North Korean or a Zimbabwean saying an equivalent level goofy thing, right? This person wouldn't be credible. You understand? So yeah, obfuscate. Yes, obfuscate. I never use that word, so I wanted to make sure. All right, so tapped in, twin. Yeah, we tapped in, man. We tapped in. They need to feel special. Yeah, you're correct. Ancient 1.7. 1.7 is the oldest I got. My 1.7 is in Kenya. There's also a 1.6 in Ethiopia and a 1.4 in Igbo land. Are you live today? Okay, cool. Yes, I am live. Chuku, the Almighty God? No. Chuku is not the Almighty God. Because the arrow long juju was Chuku. Not really. Could this Chuku be assigned by colonialists just as they assigned Equin to them? Okay, so these are good questions. So we can't say Chuku is almighty because Chuku comes in a pair. There's two. Creation comes in twos. All things come in twos, right? There's two sides to my face, DNA, two helix, all these different things. All things come in twos. We're in Uwa Boa. Everything comes madumo, two, two, two. And those two things have to negotiate and interface in order for things to exist and to happen. Okay? So Chuku is not almighty, right? Because Chuku is one, when we say Chuku, we're saying Chuku Abiyama. There's Chuku Abiyama, who is the father. There's Ekekeroa, who is the mother. Together, they are a couple known as Chineke. Chineke. Chineke is almighty. Chuku is 50% mighty, right? Chuku is 50% mighty. Eke, 50% mighty. But together, Chineke is almighty. Does that make sense? It's like if I were to say, who are your parents? And then you say, let's say your dad's name is Gabriel, right? Gabriel is my only creator. Well, you have a mother too, don't you? Yeah. Okay, so it's a 50-50 thing. They both made you, right? So just like two people make a child, two forces make all things. We have a mother and a father known as Chi na Eke. Chi na Eke. Okay. Now going to Arochukwu Long Juju. The Arochukwu Long Juju is an Arushi. Is an Arushi. An Arushi is a place, a device, a shrine, an altar that is used to channel or communicate with a power. Used to channel and to communicate with a power. The shrine itself is not the power. It is the thing, the technology that allows access to or a singular meeting point for human beings and that power. Okay. Ironically, the Chuku in the Aro Chuku Long Juju is not Chuku Abiyama. It is Eke, who's also known as Ne Chuku. Whoa, what's going on? What's going on? It is Ne Chuku, right? So the story begins in a town called Uguele, Uturu Uguele, which also has the oldest artifact site in West Africa, right? And Nechuku, it was said that Nechuku was the wisest oracle of all. The oracle was in a tree. Some say a tree, some say a cave, right? But the oracle was in a tree. This is the first Arushi that we had as a people. So we go to this place to communicate with this spirit. The place itself is not the spirit. The place is the Arushi, right? Where the thing is coming from, right? And so people were traveling far and wide from all over the world to ask Chuku, the Ne Chuku specifically, or Neka, Neka. That's where you get the phrase Neka, the pretty serpent, where they made the movie back in the day about that phrase is from this story, right? So you go to Neka, who is the mother, Eke, Eke. Both of them are called Chuku. Chuku just means the big chi, the big chi. One is Ne Chuku, one is Oke Chuku or Na Chuku or Chuku Abiyama, father and mother. Okay, so they're communicating with Nechuku at this place, and she's communicating with human beings for thousands and thousands and millions of years, right? Until one day, a woman in the community gets jealous of Nechuku and says, "Why is everybody going to Nechuku to ask these questions? Why don't they come to me? There's no way that Nechuku knows everything. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hide my cooking pot. And I'm going to go and ask Nechuku to find the cooking pot if this alleged Nechuku is so wise." So the woman did exactly that. She hid the cooking pot. She got up. She went to the Nechuku shrine and she said, "Nechuku, if you're so smart, why don't you find my cooking pot?" Right? And so after a while, Nechuku not only found the cooking pot, but she told the village something that they did not want to hear, that nobody would ever want to hear. She said that because of the disrespect from that event, she is leaving this community and she is not returning to this community, and she will go elsewhere. And so the spirit of Nechuku rose from that Irish into the sky and landed in a different community. Okay, and landed in a different community. Now, here's the thing about the Arochukwu long juju, that one. Several communities claim that Nechukwu came to them. Several claim that Nechukwu came to them, right? But the way Odinani works is you have to prove your claim. You can't just claim something, right? Whatever you claim has to be real. It's not just, oh, Nechukwu is here, now we must believe you, okay? There's an ilu that says when an Arashi fails to do what an Arashi is supposed to do, we use it as firewood, okay? We use it for firewood. So why does this ilu say this? It says that if you say that this Arashi is an Ikenga and it's supposed to activate my Ikenga, and it doesn't activate my Ikenga, then it's firewood. I have no obligation of belief. So there are several communities throughout Igbo land that claim that Nechukwu landed in their community. But the Nechukwu, that one that landed, the Arochukwu one, actually landed in an Ibibio community. It wasn't even an Igbo community, it was an Ibibio community, and it landed in an Aroshi called Ibini Upabi, which is the drum of God, right, in their language. It landed in Ibini Upabi. And what ended up happening is all of the Aros, and Aro is a type of Igbo person, right? There are different distinctions of Igbo people. All of the Aros formed like an army and invaded that community and took it over, right? Invaded that community and took it over. And that was how Arochukwu was founded, because they said that Nechukwu landed there. And they know for a fact. Now, again, it's about proof. It's not about belief. After, if Nechukwu is here, Nechukwu should be able to do X, Y, Z, all these different things. And if all these other places are claiming she's there, they should be able to do X, Y, Z, all these different things. But the long juju, as they ends up being called, the Ibini Upabi, ends up being more effective than all of the other Arashi. It's more effective. So it becomes more powerful and more popular. People from all over West and Central Africa go to Arochukwu, and Arochukwu ends up in that time becoming the biggest town in Igbo land because of the shrine, right? So Chukwu is not the shrine. The shrine is not the Arashi. The Arashi is a home of the spirit of Nechukwu. Now, in the Arochukwu version of the story, Nechukwu lands in Arochukwu, which was not called Arochukwu at the time. Arochukwu is a newer community than other Igbo communities, by the way. It's like from the 1600s. So Nechukwu spirit lands in the shrine, and Nechukwu herself decides to turn herself into a man so that no woman will disrespect her in the future. So Ibiri Upabi starts as Nechukwu and then becomes Chukwu Abiyama because it turned itself into a man. But the father Chukwu is not, we can't reach that one. He's in the other space, right? He's in the other space. If you're in existence, if you're in the world, you're dealing with Nechukwu, Allah, all of these different ones. But Chukwu Abiyama, the original Chukwu, is on a different level. I hope that answered the story, right? I hope that answered the story or answered the question. But no, Chukwu was not assigned by the colonist. The concept of Chukwu predates the colonist. So, it's a sign of immaturity. They're toddlers in the world stage, absolutely. They abandoned their ancestors, so they have to avoid what came before them. Yeah. All right. So we got some real wisdom here. Achillean tools. Yeah. In fact, they attribute paper to Asia. Okay, we read that one. School districts, obfuscates, expansions believed to have taken place 6 to 150,000 years ago, approximate. Yeah, for some reason, nothing predates 6,000 years. Nothing predates 6,000 years, and I have a hard time believing it. Now, why do I believe that the Bantu migrations, if that's what you're talking about, predate 6,000 years? Because there are artifacts. There are artifacts tied to the traditions of the people in those lands that are older than 6,000 years, right? You go to like the Ishango bones. The Ishango bones are older than 6,000 years. You understand? So, I don't know. But who knows? Maybe there wasn't even a migration. I don't know. Again, the person saying this thing happened is not a credible source of information. So now we have to do our own investigation. So the expansion reached South Africa. But it's always important for them to point out. So one of the reasons I avoid this whole Bantu thing is because a lot of it is just white South African propaganda, and it is there to say, "Oh well, you guys are foreigners just like us." And the only real South Africans are the Khoisan because they're smaller and more like you can manage them better because there's less of them, right? And that kind of thing. So a lot of it is white South African propaganda. But again, if you look at the artifact record and the tools that were being used in the artifact record in South Africa, you will know that, and the Khoisan don't use those tools. You'll know that something's off with the timeline, right? In fact, white South Africans are trying to claim that they arrived in South Africa before the Zulu people. The Zulu people were in Zimbabwe before, and then right when they got there, the Zulu people started moving in. Which it's local South African politics. It's like a South African pretendianism, 6,000 years also to be the cap when they talk about ancient religions. We've been around for a hot minute, exactly. So people just sit around for millions and millions of years, and then on year, right when we hit that 1 year, that 6,000 from today, we start just. I think they say 6,000 years ago is when the blue eye gene appears in humans or something like that, right? Something. So maybe that's why they picked that number. Don't quote me on that. I could be wrong, but somebody pops up 6,000 years ago. So I'll do my. Left Christianity in November after doing my research. Listening to your videos. Yeah, welcome, welcome. Anything you need, we're here. I'll do my. Cool, cool, cool. 6,000 years also. So yeah, okay, we read that. So Chuku turned into a man. Sorry, I came late. Oh. You have to watch the replay. I can't retell the story. But there's already a male Chuku, and one town in Igbo land claims that there's a male and a female Chuku, and they claim that the female Chuku came to their town and became a man so that it wouldn't be disrespected, right? So that's just one town's claim. That's one town's claim. Okay. The last African human period. All right, we're in our archaeology bag today, in our ancient history bag, which is where I love to be. All right, so last African human period ended 6,000 years ago. It would have led to people leaving the Green Sahara and producing waves of migration that even gave us ancient Kemet. Okay, yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. They crafted ships to travel to America over 30,000 years ago. Yeah, yeah. So I don't know too much about migration to America, but I do know that in different periods of time, the sea levels were significantly more shallow, and not like puddle shallow, but they weren't as severe as what they are. And therefore they wouldn't have such severe currents and things like that. And so in different periods, like during ice ages and things like that, it would have navigating the ocean would have been very possible. And if you understand that, you understand how human beings got to where they got to. One of the interesting things that I found was that, and I'm still researching this, don't quote me yet. If it's not true, I'm not going to put it in the video, but it's going to be the next video. So you can unlock a lot of our history as a species, as humans, by studying the cultivation of yam, right? Of yam. Some of the first crops that were grown were root crops. And root crops are unique because they allow you, okay, so if you grow crops that grow above the ground, you can only travel east to west. You can only migrate and settle east to west. Once you go north, you enter a different temperature zone or a climate zone, and your plant may not survive that new climate zone. Okay. And so you'll notice that throughout the world, cultures are more like their neighbors from east to west than they are to their neighbors north and south. Okay, so there's like a trying to think of some examples. You get what I mean. Anyways, so what was I saying? So yeah, but root farms are good because since they're not above the ground, since they're below the ground, they allow north and south travel. You can travel north and south, and people believe that this was the catalyst for the Bantu migrations. That they have this crop now that grows underground, and since it grows underground, I'm not too dependent on the climate situation above ground, so long as it's you know Africa like warm, right, and not too wet. What am I doing? And not too wet, right? So why am I saying all this? So the first species of crop. This is the part where I'm like, don't quote me yet because I'm still researching it. The first yam is cultivated in the Niger Delta, is what it said. Is the Niger Delta, right? And which is Igbo land and a bunch of other cultures. And but the yam that everybody eats today, the popular one, actually comes from the what is now Dahomey or Benin Republic, so Ewe territory and other groups like that, Yoruba, things like that. That's that type of yam. The big white one ends up being the one that everybody ends up using. But the first species, it starts with a P. I can't remember the name. Comes from the Niger Delta. Now, what I found very interesting is in Papua New Guinea, they eat the one that starts with a P. They eat the original yam that comes from Niger Delta that starts with a P. Now, I don't know what that means, but I found that parallel very interesting because one of the things I found in my research is that if you go from West Africa all the way to East Africa, there's like a yam growing belt of these different cultures that grow yams. These different cultures that grow yams. And I had a coworker from South Sudan, and he told me when I was like 21, between 19 and like 22, he told me that my people and his people are related. And I'm like, really? There's a certain way South Sudanese people look, and he had a little bit of that look, but he kind of looked like he's from my mom's family, right? Like he looked like my people, right? And I'm like, oh, but he's tall, like a South Sudanese person, that kind of thing. And I'm like, okay, tell me more. And he's like, yeah, that they have people with like names like Okafo and Okoye, and there's even a Kenyan guy in Kenyan news named Okoye, and all these different things. I'm like, okay, that's interesting, that kind of thing. I thought it was interesting how he used the names Okafo and Okoye because those are four market day names, right? Okafo is just man of Afo, child born on Afo Day. Okoye, child or man born on Uriye Day, right? And so my research leads me back to this guy's culture, and then to the Lua people in Kenya, and then to another group of people in Ethiopia that I didn't know about. I go, Ethiopia? And I type in their thing. I go on YouTube. I see a song being performed. I'm sitting there looking at my Uncle Joffrey performing this song in a language that's vaguely familiar. But, and I'm like, get the fuck out. And so I'm like, I start looking into this culture and I find their origin story, the story that they say is their origin story. If you're an Igbo person, okay, if you're an Igbo person, or if you followed me long enough, tell me if this story sounds familiar. I'm going to misquote their story, little pieces, but I'm going to give you the main parts. Tell me if this shit sounds familiar. This is their origin story. The culture, I don't know how to say it because I've never heard it said before, but it's Marnaj, I think, Maranj, something like that. It's in Western Ethiopia. Their origin story is that, and they're related to the Luo people in Kenya. And their origin story is that there was a group of women that went to a river. And at that river, they saw a mysterious man, but the man wouldn't speak. So they brought the man back home to their father. And they asked the father to make the man speak, and he wouldn't speak. And he said, okay, but he's a guest, so we're going to lodge him in our home, this mysterious man who won't speak. And I want you, my daughter, to be his attendant. right? To anything he needs, make sure he gets it, take care of him, always be by his side. And so this happened, and one day the daughter woke up pregnant with the man's child. And what was it? What was it? What was it? No, I'm saying this incorrectly. After a while, the man began to speak a little bit more upon finding out that the daughter was pregnant with his child. This is the part where I'm going to misquote it. The man lets them know that he has to leave, but that he's going to bless them with 4 gifts. And I don't remember the words they use for the gifts. Maybe in the video I'll tell the story a little bit more sharply. But he gives them these 4 little magic things, or like I think they're pots. 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And so the child is born. The child ends up being the founding father of their culture, right? And they use those 4 things. I can't remember what they were, but there are these 4 particular things to know themselves, to know who they are, right? And I'm like, get the fuck out of here. Because we have the exact same story at home. Only it's 4 women. It's not 1 man, it's 4 women. And the 4 women are brought in, they won't speak. And they won't speak. And so then the king goes, okay, well, they're my guests, so get them a room, allow them to sleep. And while they're sleeping, they send a rat to the 4 women. And the rat bites each of the women on the foot. And when one gets bit, she says, Eke, why did you do that? The next one gets bit. Uriye, stop playing around. Afo, Hapamaka, don't do that. Nkwo, stop biting me or stop pinching me. And so then they wake up in the morning and the man goes, okay, I'm glad you guys were here to stay. It's been nice getting to know you, Eke, Uriye, Afo, and Nkwo. And the women gasp and they go, so you know our names? And he goes, yes. And she goes, the women go, okay, for your hospitality, we're going to leave you with these 4 pots. And they give him these 4 pots. And the pots are to bring him that he was going to use to build the markets, the Eke market, the Uriye, the Afo, and the Nkwo. You understand? And then they go about their way. You understand? So when I saw their story, it looked familiar to me, but I need harder evidence. So I'm going to continue looking into it. But these are the things that yes, 4 baskets, 4 market days. Exactly. Yes, I go find out those. Exactly. John, you know. So yeah, but I found all the way in Papua New Guinea, they also grow yams, which I didn't know that. I didn't know they were farmers. If you let these Oyibo people depict them, you would never see that. But I didn't know that the cultures in Papua New Guinea were farmers. And if they are farmers and they've been virtually isolated from the rest of the world for tens and thousands of years, that would mean that farming is tens and thousands of years old, that it didn't just pop up in Mesopotamia. And then the guy got on a boat and taught the people in Papua New Guinea how to farm, but not farming the way he's farming, and then that didn't happen, right? If the people in Papua New Guinea were farming, and I'm going to look into Aboriginal Australians as well. I don't know if they did or not, but if they did, it kind of points more to the direction I'm going. And they root farm, they farm underground, and what they farmed were yams. And the species of yam they farmed was related to the original species from the Niger Delta. So just finding some interesting things, right? Finding some interesting things. This next video is not for everybody. This is for the people that get into the weeds of all this stuff, right? That kind of thing. It's not for everybody. Imagine making a ship but not being able to plant a goddamn sea. Thank you. Like the big idea, and I think the West operates off this idea of like the idiot caveman, right? The idiot caveman. That right now, this is the smartest human beings have ever been. And people back then couldn't have possibly known this or known that or had anything in common with us. There's a thing in Western thought where you are super special. And by you, I mean, where's the camera here? So that where you are super special and things are not like you. And then when you figure out things are like you, you go, oh, wow, that thing is like me, right? In African thought, we understand that things are like us because we are from all of these things, right? The Ilu says, if you look into the shrew, I'm sorry, if you look into the burrow of the shrew, you'll understand the burrow of the rabbit, right? If you look into the burrow of the shrew, you understand the burrow of a rabbit. If you understand the modern mind, you understand the ancient mind. Why the hell would people who spent any amount of time outside not know that vegetation comes from seeds and that things grow from the ground? Like that's it's the same thing as not knowing that there's oxygen outside, right? I know we're living in these box rooms with all this drywall, and for some people that sounds like seeing a thing grow is weird, but anybody prior to 1975 has in any country on planet Earth would have a hard time saying, "Oh, I've never seen a thing grow from a seed." You know what I mean? I've never seen a thing grow from a seed. So if a person can make a boat and can make iron and do all these extra things, I don't know how to make a boat, but I know how to passively see a thing grow out of a seed. I know that trees come out of the ground. So why would human beings spend millions of years and not figure this out? And then all of a sudden, aha, now that we have blue-eyed people, I think we can put things in the ground and things will come out. That's silly. It's ridiculous, right? It's ridiculous. So, like I said, I'm very hesitant on what I consider a credible source these days. Um, I think it's supposed to be that way. I think it's supposed to be that way. I think after a while, you just gotta accept things for what they are and move in a direction that makes sense, right? 1.7 million years. Agriculture is not new. Farming is not new. Growing things is not new. And it's known. This is known archaeology. It's not a hidden, it's not, it's semi-hidden. It's semi-hidden, right? But it's known. If you dig it, but well, it was a crude agriculture. They'll put some stupid caveat. You understand, right? They'll put some stupid caveat. But there's, like I said, there's wall art all over Africa that depicts this, that depicts harvesting. So, right? You understand? All right, I missed a lot of questions in that rant. Come on, there. 6,000 years is linked to the start of Mesopotamian civilization. Okay, you know. Which is the West argue is the earliest of which, whatever, whatever they mean by that is their business. These are not people with the depth of knowledge to be listened to. You can't listen to these. Why? Because the human animal has spent the majority of its existence in that 80 to 90%. I think about 85% of our existence has been exclusively in Africa. But you can walk out of archaeology, you can walk out of anything history, not know anything about Africa, and still be considered an expert. But if I dared not know what the hell France was, I'm not getting a degree. They're not going to take me seriously if I didn't know what France was. You understand? But I'm going to take somebody seriously as an archaeologist that doesn't know what a Kenya is or doesn't know anything about it or any of its history or anything like that. No, we're out of here. You know? And then because they don't know, they say, "Oh well, it doesn't exist." I know I exist. So if you say I don't exist, I'm going to go ahead and think you're stupid or you're at least not a person I should be listening to. Right? So that's that. Okay, I don't, man. I'll figure out what's going on. I keep saying I'll figure out what's going on with this camera, but I'm going to be real. I always remember this happens in the middle of the live. The minute this is over, I'm going to go to bed and I'll wake up and I probably won't think about it. So, but I'll try to prioritize it. Question: do you guys have a frame like the yugas in Hindu? For example, Kali Yuga is supposed to be 400,000 years ago. I've never seen a time frame for them. What I know about the Uga, so I was taught about the Uga by a teacher, a former teacher of mine, who is the author of Leopards of the Magical Dawn, and from Dr. Ume, the author of After God is Dibia. But my prior to their framing it for me, yeah, prior to their framing it for me, my understanding was in folktales. So you'll notice in Igbo folktales, there'll always be these transitions, right? Where things are this way, then all of a sudden they transition and now things are this way. Things are this way, they transition, things are this way. And there's, if you count them, there's exactly four of them. There's exactly four of them, right? So the first one is you're going to always hear these stories about people being able to go in and out of Obi-Chukwu, people not needing to eat, not needing to sleep, people being able to communicate with anything, like talk to a rock, talk to a tree, and it's all the same, just total connection to everything. People being sent on missions by Chukwu to go into the earth and do this and do that. And then the next set of stories, which I tell one of these stories in my next video, all of a sudden that connection to Chukwu gets cut. And then Chukwu hides away, goes away. The connection goes away, right? And so then people now have to figure out how to survive. So there's another set of stories of people just figuring out how to be on Earth, how to exist. You understand? How to be a human being, that kind of thing. Then the next set of stories, people kind of have things very, very well figured out. More figured out than we probably do now. You understand? That's the next set of stories you're going to hear. People have things figured out more than we even do now, right? And then you hear all these epics of these like very, very great people, right? Like Oja Dili, and there's one I saw recently, the son of Amadioha, things like that. There's a whole bunch of these like epics where they're able to do these amazing things. And then the next set of stories, that gets cut. The ability to do that gets cut, or something happens and we lose that connection, right? So earlier I was telling you guys the story about Nechukwu, and then all of a sudden Nechukwu was offended and left the community. So there's a lot of stories like this, and that's the fourth one. Now, I've never heard of what year one begins, the year the next one begins. I just know that if you take all of the before now, the non-contemporary Igbo stories, and line them up, they all fit in these specific eras. That's what I know. And so I was never given a year. I'm sure somebody will come up with year estimates. I wouldn't believe it. I would need a little bit more than that. I've never seen like year breakdowns. I did see that the Hindu yugas had like time periods, like this one lasted that long, that one that lasted that long. But I haven't seen that one for the Igbo. Our ancestors also didn't count years, so some of them did. There are exceptions. I think Nri people counted years. Chai, they really use religion to finish Igbo people. If we were, dude, yeah, they did. If we ever get Biafra, many Igbos will call American Israel to come. Yeah. And hey, let me say this. The Biafra movement was catching an amazing amount of momentum. It was on the discussion table for the Nigerian federal government. It was real. It had 97% support on the ground. And then they went and took a Star of David and put it in the middle of the Anyanwu Tutu that Ojukwu and them originally put on the Biafra flag, the Anyanwu symbol, that rising sun. They went and took a Star of David and put it there, and the whole movement went to shit. The whole thing went to All those fools went to prison. Everything just went to the day. The day that shit happened, it was over. Right? And they were originally telling us Biafra Bumor, Biafra Bumor, Biafra Bumor. But mana more and I get some mado apari onwea. You understand? Okay? I'll not get some mado apari onwea. Okay? So yeah, I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you. I think religion is really the setback. I think that is really the setback, right? They took and put it right in the middle of that Anyanwu Tutsu, and that day, the whole thing went to the fucking abyss. It was gone. It was over. All of a sudden, pop, arrest. You understand? So yeah, one day we'll figure it out. One day we'll figure it out. Papua New Guinea has yam houses just like us. Yeah. It's funny. So there was a DBA that was telling me that there's a way that there's a way that DBAs are, and I always say this on my lives, I always talk about this, right? Where they just be saying things, right? They just say things. And sometimes it'll surpass my scope of belief. I'm like, man, come on, man. But I had one tell me that, yeah, our people are in Papua New Guinea. That's our people. And I'm like, man, come on, dude. Like pull it back in, pull it back in. And now look at me, right? Look at me. I'm like, yo, they grown the same. So eventually, I always eventually get there. But sometimes I need to take my own baby steps. But this was told to me a long time ago. That a lot of these traditions, you'll see them there too. You understand? So maybe I need to make a trip. Also, why do they call West Africa Guinea? I think Guinea is a slur for Black people or tropical people. I think Guinea is a slur for Black people or tropical people. But yeah, FDC, they really use religion to buy our senses. I always emphasize, and maybe people don't understand what I'm saying when I say this. Colonialism was done by religion. It wasn't done by guns. The Europeans will tell you these fantastical stories where they're shooting through Africa. That shit didn't happen. It never happened. You understand? It never happened. The actual colonial administrations struggled to control Africa. They struggled to control. Once they started doing simple things like, okay, now you have to pay me taxes, that's when the independence movement started. Like, taxes, what are you talking about? Right? So the actual administrations, the actual colonists, they had a hard time doing what they wanted to do. Britain did not make money in Nigeria. It ran a net zero because it always had to keep spending money, putting down shit and doing this and that. But the churches, it was the churches that were effective. They did the work. And it wasn't the actual Oyibo church person. It was the little minions he trained and brainwashed to send into the rest of our society and destroy things. Right? So I always talk about, whenever people say Africa, the next thing they say is colonialism, right? And I always try to tell them, of all the continents on planet Earth, Africa has had the least amount of colonization. It's had the shortest period of colonization, the least amount of penetration as far as like Europeanization, all that stuff. It's the least integrated into the European global system, the least integrated into the European economy, all these different things. But the church had ransacked that place, right? Ransacked that place. And a lot of it was after colonialism. A lot of the spreading happened after, most of the spreading happened after colonialism. As of the 1980s, I was talking to my brother-in-law, and as of the 1980s, like my own town was at least like 30-40% like traditionalist. Like most of the men in the community weren't Christians. It was usually like women and their kids, but now their kids are the adults, and so now it's everybody, right? Now it's everybody. So, but yeah, the story of how colonialism happened in some places, the way they tell it is how it had like South Africa, Congo, yeah, yeah, all that Leopold stuff, yeah, that's really what happened, right? But it was the church that was what did colonialism, and it was the churchified African that did the colonialism. It wasn't the white people. It was the churchified African that did the colonialism. Right? It wasn't the white people can't sustain a large population in Africa. In most of Africa, they'll die. They don't have the immunity, right? If you're one of these people, you have a certain. I think it's like RATA or RADA. There's a certain adaptation you have. It's not sickle cell, but it's a certain adaptation you have that makes it so that malaria can't kill you or can't unalive you. I don't know if they go by these rules on this website, right? That kind of thing. And so they don't have that, so they just can't do these things that their stories claim that they did. But they just need to send one minister that's willing to have malaria for years, have him train about 14 people, and then let them people run amok. And that's what most of the colonization happened after independence, by the people who had that thing in their head. So the more people that get that thing out of their head, that's when the real decolonialization happens, right? It's not an army thing. It's really not an army thing. It's not. It's a religious thing. Almost purely. You understand, right? So, and you know that includes Hebrews, all these Hebrews too, all these Igbo Hebrews, because there's Christians, but they're Christians that want to be the main character in the story. You know, that went and put that stupid Star of David in the flag and just the entire. I never seen something just vanish that quickly from the sheer disrespect. Oh, Demma. Have you encountered dwarves either in dreams or waking life? John, no, I haven't personally. I have not personally. So, y'all, I think that's been it for today. This has been a really good discussion. I want to apologize to you guys. I didn't break OG in the beginning of this. I won't make that mistake next time. Right now, we are getting ready for our next set of classes of the traditional medicine class and the Igbo language class. Make this the year that you learn your ancestral language. Okay. Make this the year that you learn your ancestral language. It's so funny. I've been doing Kedu for so long that I can speak Igbo with several of you guys now, right? And I love that. I literally started this live bragging about, like, feeling good about someone that I could not only speak Igbo with now, but she's in Nigeria and, and she's just living the culture and taking things in and all that stuff, right? She's ethnically Black American, right? That kind of thing. So that's always really cool for me. So let's keep that going. This is the only movement moving. And it's going to be like that for a while because what we're doing here is really important, right? I'm so glad I got some rest too. So, because I'm telling you guys, I was feeling, I was in like a weird, hazy mental space. I think a lot of it was just exhaustion, right? So I'm going to do a lot more napping. Um, and the next video I'm releasing is for me. You understand? It's for me. So I'm going to go really, I don't know if you guys have seen the Osu explained video where I start explaining the whole Usu thing. That video was for me. You understand? That was for me. You understand? And then, of course, I wanted to debunk the whole Usu thing because it's getting people hurt. But this is kind of in the same vein, like is where my mind is at right now. So that being said, uno gadi, uno geto, nkobala, uno tiriaka, ogade no wa. I'm gonna join the Patreon. I'm ready to learn. All right. Anyways, yeah, nkobala uno tiriaka, ogade no wa, ogade otwane, ke nori and afọ na mpo. You say. All right, take care, y'all.